A few summers ago, I stood in my backyard and just stared. The flower beds I had worked so hard to plant, the ones I had watered and fussed over and fertilized, were either dead, overrun with weeds, or so overgrown that I could barely see the flowers through all the mess. I was tired. My knees were telling me they'd had enough, and I remember thinking there has to be a better way. I love beautiful flowers, I always have, but I am not about to spend every Saturday on my hands and knees just to have something pretty to look at. So I started over, completely. I ripped everything out, the needy plants, the invasive ones, the ones that demanded more from me than they gave back, and I built a new garden, one I could actually enjoy. Today, I'm going to walk you through everything I learned, the flowers I planted, the ones I wish I had never touched, and the few simple tricks that now let me step out in the morning with a cup of tea, look at my garden, and feel nothing but pure joy. No guilt, no overwhelm, no work. If you've ever felt like your garden was working you instead of the other way around, this video is for you. My 3 golden rules. Before I show you what I planted, I want to share the 3 rules that guide every single choice in my garden now, because once I understood these, everything got so much easier. Rule 1, it must be a perennial. A perennial comes back every single year. You plant it once, just once, and year after year it returns, bigger and more beautiful than before. No replanting, no starting over, no expense. This was the first thing I changed, and it made all the difference. Rule 2, it must thrive on neglect. Drought-tolerant and pest-resistant. I am not chasing deer, hand-watering, or spraying chemicals. The plants in my garden earn their place by surviving with very little fuss from me. Rule 3, it must be worth cutting. Because the greatest luxury in having a flower garden, the one that makes all of it worthwhile, is walking outside, cutting a handful of stems, and placing them in a vase on your kitchen table. There is nothing in the world like flowers from your own garden, so every plant I chose has to be beautiful enough to bring indoors. The flowers that earned their place. These are the plants that have rewarded me year after year with almost zero effort. I'll tell you what I love about each one and what you need to know before you plant. Lavender, the one that never asks for anything. Let me start here because lavender changed the way I think about gardening. I used to kill it every time. And then I learned the secret. I was killing it with kindness. I was watering it too much. Lavender is essentially a Mediterranean plant. It comes from sun-drenched hillsides where the soil is thin, stony, and bone dry. Overwatering it is the #1 mistake most gardeners make. Plant it in full sun, in well-drained soil, and then walk away. That is the entire care guide. I grow both English lavender and Spanish lavender. English lavender, Lavandula angustifolia, produces those classic long, fragrant spikes and is the hardiest variety for colder climates, surviving down to zone 5. Spanish lavender has those charming little bunny ear petals on top and tends to bloom earlier in the season. The fragrance alone is worth growing it. Cut the stems before the flowers are fully open. This is when the scent is strongest, and hang them to dry upside down. Within a week, you have dried lavender for sachets, for your linen drawer, or simply to place in a little dish on the table. It keeps its fragrance for months. If I could grow one flower for the rest of my life, it would be the coneflower. Echinacea purpurea, the purple coneflower, is what I think of as the perfect perennial. It is bold, it is beautiful, and it is completely, utterly unfazed by anything. The blooms appear in mid-June, and they keep coming all the way through to the first frost. We're talking nearly 5 months of color. The flowers are large, up to 4 inches across, and they sit on tall, upright stems that are perfect for cutting. I love them massed in a vase on their own or mixed with a few sprigs of lavender. Echinacea comes from the North American prairies, which tells you everything about its nature. It evolved to survive drought, heat, poor soil, and cold winters. It actually resents rich, over-fertilized soil. It prefers things a little lean. Once established, usually by the 2nd year, it spreads slowly and graciously, filling in your border without ever becoming aggressive. And here is something I adore about coneflower. If you leave the spent seed heads standing through autumn and winter, the goldfinches will come. There is something deeply satisfying about sitting by the window in November watching little birds feeding on a flower you planted. If Coneflower is the backbone, Black-Eyed Susan is the warmth and the cheer. Rudbeckia hirta, those bright golden yellow petals and that rich chocolate brown center are instantly recognizable and endlessly cheerful. They bloom from early July right through to frost, a long, generous season. What I love most about Black-Eyed Susans is how brilliantly they combine with other flowers in a vase. Put 3 stems of Coneflower and 5 stems of Black-Eyed Susan in a clear glass vase. No arranging, just drop them in, and it looks like something from a florist's window. They are extraordinarily tough. Sandy soil, clay soil, dry spells, none of it bothers them. They self-seed gently over the years, meaning your clump slowly becomes a colony, which is exactly what you want. No deadheading required, no dividing needed for many years. Truly a plant that rewards patience. This one is something of a hidden gem, and I think it deserves far more attention than it gets. Gladiardia, the blanket flower, has the most intensely vibrant blooms of almost any perennial I grow. Rich scarlet and gold like a beautiful woven blanket. The colors do not fade, they do not wash out. They stay vivid from the moment the flower opens to the day the petals drop. It blooms from June all the way to October. I have never deadheaded mine. It simply keeps producing new buds on its own. It thrives in full sun, handles drought with complete composure, and is completely unbothered by poor or sandy soil. In fact, if you give it too much water or too rich a soil, it may not perform as well. This is a flower that prefers a little hardship. Compact in size, usually about 18 inches tall and wide, it is perfect at the front of a border or along a pathway, where those jewel-like colors can be seen up close. And yes, it cuts beautifully. There is something about the simplicity of a white daisy with a golden center that I find deeply calming. Shasta daisies, Leucothanthum ax superbum, have that quality. They're clean, they're classic, and they bring a kind of quiet elegance to a garden that bolder flowers cannot quite achieve. They bloom from June through to late July, and in a mild autumn, you may get a second flush in September. Cut them early in the morning before the heat of the day, and they last beautifully in water for up to 2 weeks. I always put them in a simple white or clear vase. They need no competition. One thing to know, Shasta daisies do spread, and after a few years, you will want to divide the clumps in early spring. This is not a burden, it is a gift. You dig up a clump, pull it into sections, and suddenly you have 6 new plants to fill another bed or to share with a neighbor. It is one of the great pleasures of perennial gardening. Russian sage, billowing silver blue and utterly carefree. Russian sage, Perennial atriplycifolia, is one of those plants that earns its place through sheer beauty, reliability, and near total self-sufficiency. It grows into a large, airy cloud of silver-gray stems covered in tiny lavender blue flowers from midsummer right through autumn. The effect is soft and romantic, like a haze of color rather than a solid mass. The stems are woody and aromatic. Run your hand through them and you release a clean herbal fragrance. It is highly attractive to bees and butterflies and completely deer-resistant. Like lavender, it comes from dry, rocky regions and performs best in full sun with good drainage. It will not tolerate wet feet. In autumn, cut the stems back to about a foot from the ground. In spring, it will return stronger and fuller than before. This is a plant that grows into itself over the years. By its 3rd year, it is a genuinely impressive specimen. True lilies, scent, majesty, and the garden's greatest gift. I want to be very specific here because this matters. I am talking about true lilies, lilium, not daylilies. They are entirely different plants, and I will come back to daylilies in a moment. True lilies grow from bulbs and return every year, often multiplying slowly underground. Asiatic and Oriental varieties are what I grow. Asiatic lilies bloom first, June and July, in colors from creamy white to deep crimson and sunset orange. They have no fragrance, but they are spectacular in a vase. Oriental lilies come later in July and August, and they are the ones with that rich, heady perfume that fills a whole room. Stargazer is perhaps the most beloved. Deep rose-pink petals with white edges and dark freckles on stems that can reach 3 feet tall. Plant lily bulbs in autumn, about 6 inches deep in a sunny, well-drained spot. Mulch over winter in colder zones. Then wait. When they emerge in spring, you will understand why I call them the garden's greatest gift. Hosta, the shade garden's most faithful friend. If you have a shady corner, under a tree, along a north-facing fence, hostas are your answer, and they are extraordinary. Hostas are grown primarily for their foliage, and that foliage is magnificent. The variety is staggering. Leaves can be tiny as a teacup or enormous. Some varieties grow leaves over a foot wide. Colors range from deep forest green to golden chartreuse, blue-green, and many beautiful variegated combinations of cream and green. They are perhaps the easiest perennial to divide and multiply. Every few years in early spring, simply insert a spade through the middle of the clump and replant each half. Within a season, they are as full and lush as before. I have shared dozens of hostas with friends and still have more than I need. They do send up flower spikes in summer, usually pale lavender or white, which are quietly pretty. And they are completely trouble-free except for slugs, which can be managed with a few scattered pellets if needed. Now, I want to save you from some mistakes that cost me years of frustration. These plants might look tempting, and some of them are genuinely beautiful, but they belong in a different kind of garden. Not mine, and probably not yours. I inherited a patch of this when I moved into my current home. One small clump planted by a previous owner has spread into a mat that covers an entire bed. It is nearly impossible to eradicate. The underground rhizomes snap when you pull them, and every fragment left in the soil sprouts a new plant. It blooms for perhaps 2 to 3 weeks in May, producing small, sweet-smelling white bells that are admittedly lovely, but for the other 10.5 months of the year, it is just a dense mat of undistinguished leaves slowly strangling everything around it. Avoid it entirely, unless you give it a container where it cannot spread. Daylilies. I know this may surprise some of you. Daylilies are everywhere, and many gardeners love them. But here is the truth about daylilies. Each individual flower lasts exactly 1 day. As a result, a plant that looks spectacular in the morning may be covered in wilted, faded blooms by evening. Deadheading them is constant work, and if you skip it, the plant looks untidy. Beyond that, many common daylily varieties spread aggressively, sending roots deep and wide. They can quickly outcompete neighboring plants and become difficult to remove. They are also not good cut flowers. They droop and close almost immediately after cutting. Contrast this with a true lily, which stays beautiful for a week or more in a vase and needs no deadheading. The difference is enormous. Peonies. Beautiful, but with a catch. I genuinely love peonies. Those enormous, many-petaled blooms in shades of blush, white, and deep rose are among the most beautiful flowers that exist. They are long-lived perennials. A well-placed peony can bloom for 30 years or more in the same spot. But I must warn you about one thing: ants. Peony buds produce a sweet secretion that ants cannot resist. You will find them covering every bud, and if you bring a peony stem indoors without shaking it thoroughly, you will have ants on your table within the hour. I still grow peonies, but I grow them specifically for the garden, not for cutting. Invasive spreaders: irises, buttercups, and mountain bluet. As a general principle, be cautious of any plant that someone offers you from their own garden with the words, "It spreads like mad." That is not generosity. That is a warning. Certain irises, buttercups, and mountain bluet can become genuinely invasive, crowding out everything you worked to establish. Research a plant's spreading habits before it goes into the ground. Just a few practical things that have made my garden dramatically easier to maintain. Landscape fabric, your greatest ally against weeds. I lay landscape fabric under all my borders and cut holes only where my plants are. No newspaper, no cardboard. I want something that lasts for years. Cover it with a good layer of mulch, 2 to 3 inches, and you will barely see a weed. This single step has saved me more time and effort than anything else I've done in the garden. Mulch, the gardener's best friend. Mulch does 3 things. It suppresses weeds, it conserves moisture so you water far less often, and it protects roots from temperature extremes, both summer heat and winter cold. A good layer of bark mulch refreshed every year or two keeps borders looking tidy and plants thriving. For a large garden, have a load delivered rather than buying individual bags. It works out far cheaper. Plant sharing, the secret to a free garden. Almost every perennial I've described today can be divided and shared. Coneflower, Shasta Daisies, Hostas, Russian Sage, Black-Eyed Susans, all of them benefit from periodic division, and every division is a new plant. If you know anyone with an established garden, ask them if they would share some divisions in spring. Gardeners are almost always delighted to share. Your entire garden can cost you very little beyond your initial investment if you embrace this. I want to leave you with something I think about often. A garden should feel like a gift, not a task. It should be the place you go to rest, to breathe, to feel the particular pleasure of watching something living grow and thrive. It should not be a source of obligation or guilt. The flowers I have shared with you today, the lavender, the coneflowers, the lilies, the black-eyed Susans, they have given me all of that. A garden that is beautiful from June through to October. A garden that asks very little and gives enormously. A garden I am proud of and that I actually enjoy. Whatever your space, a wide border, a small bed, a few pots on a patio, you can have this too. Start with one or two of these plants. See how they do. I think you will be delighted. If this video has been helpful, I would love to know which plant you're most excited to try. Tell me in the comments below. And if you have a plant you have grown and loved for years that I haven't mentioned, please share it with the home gardener community. We are all learning from each other. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the garden.